You're scrolling. Your thumb moves before you think. You didn't decide to do it. It just happened. You tell yourself it's a choice, a small one. But notice this. You don't remember the last thing you skipped. You only remember the feeling that made you keep going. You're not looking for anything specific. You're reacting. And if you pause right now, even for a second, something feels slightly off. Like stopping costs more than continuing. That discomfort, hold it. Don't name it yet. This isn't a theory, and it's not a warning. You've already felt this pattern in your own body. The pull, the repeat, the quiet fatigue after. No research needed. You've lived it. If you stay, you won't get advice or solutions. You'll just see a familiar behavior from a different angle. Not a big revelation, just a small, precise shift in how you notice what's already happening. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. That sound, that little chime, it's not your friend. It's a weapon aimed directly at the oldest part of your brain, the part that hunted, the part that craved, the part that kept you alive. Every time you swipe, you pull a lever. You are a lab rat in a box, tapping a button for a pellet of hope that rarely comes. You think you are looking for love. You are wrong. You are being trained to crave the next hit, the next face, the infinite possibility. You are being taught that the person in front of you is disposable, a placeholder, and your biology is learning this lesson perfectly. Love cannot survive this experiment. One swipe, another, a third. Faces blur into a smear of digital ether, a river of data ghosts flowing past your vacant attention. This is not a search. It is a harvest, an endless, accelerating procession of human potential, each soul flattened into a two-dimensional offering, waiting to be judged in a fraction of a second. Yes. No. Maybe. It doesn't matter. The action is the thing. The ritualized cull. A percussive machine gun rhythm set to the sickeningly familiar jingle of a slot machine paying out in microscopic, unsatisfying, hope-laced increments. You are pulling a lever over and over, hoping for a jackpot of intimacy that the machine was never, ever designed to release. Now, stop. Look closer at the artifact, the profile. This is not a portrait of a person. It is an epistemological crime scene. It is the clinical fabrication of a product spec sheet, a soul reverse engineered for maximum market appeal. Here is the photograph, optimized for the correct angle of jawline, the precise degree of feigned spontaneity. Here is the biography, not a story, but a string of A/B, tested anecdotes and curated banalities. A list of consumable interests, hobbies as personality, travel as depth. It is a focus-grouped ghost, an optimized caricature designed to signal value, not to whisper a single, terrifying, authentic truth. This is a lie you tell yourself, so you can be sold to someone else who is telling the exact same lie. The architecture of this trap is not an accident. It is a masterpiece of behavioral engineering. The swipe mechanism, in its brutal simplicity, is not a search function. It is a gambling device. Its only purpose is to hijack the most primitive, reward-seeking circuitry in your animal brain. It is a Skinner box for loneliness. That neurological pathway, the mesolimbic corridor, was designed to compel you to hunt, to forage, to survive. Now, it is tethered to an infinite scroll of faces. The variable ratio of reinforcement, the unpredictable match, is what forges the steel chain of this addiction. It is not the reward that hooks you. It is the relentless, tantalizing possibility of the reward. Your primate brain, a billion-year-old piece of hardware, cannot tell the difference between chasing a potential mate across the savannah and chasing an ephemeral pixel across a screen. It learns only one thing: the chase is everything. We were not always here. Excavate the digital past. Remember the dial-up shriek, the archive of clumsy, text-heavy websites from a forgotten epoch. Connection then required effort. It demanded the digital courage to write a paragraph, to risk syntax, to be awkward and exposed in slow motion. It was cumbersome. It was inefficient. It had friction. And in that friction, there was meaning. We have witnessed an epochal drift, a tectonic shift in the continental plates of human desire, a slow, systemic entropy, away from connection as an act of will and toward consumption as an act of bourre, thinking impulse. And here, the floor drops out from beneath you, the great and terrible revelation. You believed the algorithm was a benevolent digital god, a complex mathematical engine sifting the universe to find your other half. This is the foundational lie. The perfect match algorithm was never designed to find you the one. Its sole commercial and structural purpose is to keep you on the app. It is engineered to keep you seeking, perpetually orbiting the star of satisfaction, but never permitting you to land. It must give you just enough hope to continue, and just enough failure to ensure you never leave. The game itself is the product. The house always wins. You are not the customer here. You are the asset being milked for attention, and your loneliness is the oil that greases the gears of the entire machine. If this machine is designed to make us chase ghosts in a digital purgatory, to chemically bond us to the hunt rather than the prize, what happens to our biology when we mistake the chase for the capture? There was a time when human connection had a texture, a friction. It lived in the space between heartbeats, in the static hum of an awkward silence, in the metallic taste of fear before approaching a stranger in a crowded room. We have, with the precision of a surgeon, performed a radical operation upon ourselves. In our paranoid quest to eliminate all social risk, to smooth every rough edge of interaction into a seamless, predictable glide, we have surgically removed the very organ that feels love: vulnerability. That friction was never a flaw in the system. It was the system itself. The fumbled pickup line, the averted gaze, the brutal, public risk of rejection. These were not bugs to be patched. They were the biological crucible where trust was stress tested, where the raw ore of attraction was smelted into the alloy of a genuine bond. It was a form of psychological hormesis. The small, controlled doses of social stress were what made the connection anti-fragile. Authentic bonds were not discovered. They were calcified in the shared fire of that discomfort. Now, observe the modern courtship, the text-lationship. It is an architectural marvel of self-deception built in the sterile, oxygen-free clean room of the digital interface. For weeks, two people construct a towering edifice of false intimacy. Every message is a carefully considered brick. Every joke is focus grouped. Every vulnerability is curated. They fall in love not with a person, but with a literary creation, a digital avatar, a perfect ghost. And then, the first real-life meeting. It is not a date. It is an autopsy. The physical body, with its scents and its stutters and its beautiful, clumsy humanity, is a profound disappointment. It is an awkward meat-based vessel for the beautiful data stream they fell in love with. The meeting is a forensic examination of why a thing that was never alive died on contact with reality. And then comes the silence, the ghosting. You have been taught to see this as a personal moral failure, a crisis of character in the other person. This is a profound misdiagnosis. Ghosting is not a bug in the system. It is the system's most elegant, efficient, and intended outcome. It is the logical conclusion of a marketplace that treats human beings as disposable, infinitely replaceable commodities. In a world of avatars, there are no social consequences. There is no feedback loop. To delete a conversation is to delete a person. It is a clean, frictionless execution with no digital bloodstains. We witness the aftermath. The first date, post-mortem. The sterile language of disillusioned subjects describing their encounters. The date was not a meeting of souls. It was an audit. A job interview for the position of lover, where the primary objective was not discovery, but risk mitigation. The conversation was not an exploration. It was a data-gathering exercise, a verification process to confirm the claims made on the profile's spec sheet, a checklist for compatibility, ticked off in the cold, silent ledger of the mind. Is this person optimized? Do they meet the required metrics? Is their ROI promising? The system offered you a seductive bargain, a world without the searing, visceral pain of rejection, but you were never told what that pain was for. You were never told that the agony of rejection was the biological signal that the connection mattered. It was the cost of entry. It was the price tag that gave the interaction its terrifying, sacred value. Without the possibility of that pain, there is no corresponding value in acceptance. We have meticulously engineered a world of painless, meaningless encounters, a frictionless hell of our own design. When the body's ancient bonding chemicals are no longer triggered by the sacred interplay of risk and reward, what synthetic feelings rush in to fill the necrotic void? You stand before a banquet of infinite human souls, a feast so vast it eclipses the horizon. And you are dying of thirst, a thirst so profound so bone deep that only the brutal discipline of scarcity could ever hope to quench it. This is the great paradox of the modern heart. We begged the machine for abundance, and in its infinite, literal wisdom, it drowned us in it. This is the tyranny of the upgrade. A low, constant hum in the back of your skull, a corrosive awareness that a better option is always, perpetually, just one swipe away. This neurological tick, this atavistic itch for novelty, makes genuine commitment an act of profound, almost irrational defiance. The person in front of you, in all their flawed and terrifying reality, can never be a final choice. They can only ever be the best option. For now, their presence is provisional. Their value is subject to constant, rolling reassessment against an infinite sea of competitors they will never even see. You are not building a connection. You are hedging a bet. See it. The classic jam experiment, reimagined for our particular purgatory. Not jars of preserves on a shelf, but human faces on a screen. A researcher presents one group with 6 potential partners. Choices are made. Anxiety is manageable. Now, you are presented with 6,000. The grid scrolls into infinity. The faces begin to blur, their unique features dissolving into a homogeneous slurry of data points. Blonde, brunette, smiling, serious, here, gone. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function, floods with cortisol. It short circuits. Your thumb, the instrument of judgment, freezes over the glass. You are overwhelmed into a state of absolute catatonic inaction. Abundance does not liberate. It calcifies. And behind you, a shadow grows. The digital ghost archive. Every past match, every failed talking stage, every promising connection that dissolved into digital ether is not gone. It is indexed. It is archived. It is searchable. Your mind has built a mausoleum where the ghosts of past potentials are kept in perfect, unchanging stasis. They are never truly buried. And so every new person you meet is not met on their own terms. They are met by a silent, spectral jury of your past. They are ruthlessly, subconsciously judged against a legion of phantoms compared to an impossible, composite standard of perfection, cherry-picked from the best parts of a dozen people who never truly existed in the first place. This transforms the very nature of the search. Courtship is no longer a dance of discovery. It is a resource war. The human soul becomes a gamified asset, and individuals confess to curating their profiles not for connection, but to win, to maximize matches, to acquire the most socially valuable partners as if they were trophies. It is a bleak, status-driven calculus, a hostile takeover of intimacy, where the goal is not to love, but to possess the most desirable portfolio of human capital. And this is where the final, brutal reframing occurs. A cognitive shift so subtle, so catastrophic, It rewrites the source code of human relating. You are not choosing from a list of people. You are choosing from a list of options. The word changes everything. It reduces a soul to a product. It transforms a human being into a consumer good, interchangeable and subject to recall if a defect is found. And like any product on the market, they become obsolete. They are devalued the moment a newer, shinier, better marketed model is released onto the endless, scrolling shelf. If the human soul is now just a product in a digital marketplace, what is its shelf life before it begins to spoil? We have achieved a level of somatic availability unprecedented in human history, an era of frictionless access to the bodies of others. And in this grand, sterile temple of physical connection, we find ourselves marooned in a state of profound, bone-deep, emotional solitude that feels as vast and as cold as interstellar space. The warmth of a stranger's bed does nothing to warm the cold geometry of the void between you. We must confront the nature of sex without stakes. This is not a moral judgment. It is a biological audit. When the physical act is surgically decoupled from emotional investment, from social risk, from any consequence beyond the fleetingly physiological, it undergoes a terrible alchemy. The sacred ritual of union, an act that once forged tribes and bound souls, is rendered inert. It becomes a data point, a transaction of heat and friction, an expenditure of metabolic energy, with a predictable and diminishing neurological return. It is no longer communion, it is consumption. This is not without cost. There is a clinical horror unfolding at the molecular level in the silent, synaptic pathways of your brain. It is called the oxytocin crash. This neurochemical, the very glue of mammalian bonding, is designed to be released in moments of profound, trusting vulnerability. But when you subject your brain to a constant, accelerating stream of novel sexual partners, without the corresponding emotional attachment, the system begins to treat it as noise. Your receptors, overwhelmed, begin to down-regulate. They become desensitized. You are, at a chemical level, systematically burning out the very neurological hardware required to form a deep, lasting attachment. You are training your own body to be incapable of the love you claim to be seeking. And in the quiet moments, in the blue light of the screen, you hear the confession, not spoken aloud, but felt in the marrow, the fear of the real. You listen to the haunted, anonymous voices of those who admit they are terrified of a genuine relationship because it lacks the control, the predictable rules, the sterile interface of the app. It has no eject button. The digital purgatory, for all its desolation, feels safe. Its misery is a known quantity. But the terrifying, beautiful chaos of another person's unfiltered soul, that is an unquantifiable risk your optimized self has been trained to reject on sight. From this fear, a new architecture of relating is born, the situationship. This modern plague is not a relationship phase. It is the logical endpoint of frictionless relating. It is a connection without definition, without commitment, without a future, and therefore without stakes. It is the perfect emotional hedge, a masterpiece of self-deception that allows for the simulation of intimacy without a single gram of genuine vulnerability. It is an arrangement meticulously engineered to guarantee you can never be truly hurt, and therefore can never be truly loved. And here, the terrible realization dawns, catching the light like a shard of black glass. The goal is no longer to find love. The goal is to simulate connection while remaining perfectly, absolutely invulnerable. We are all building ourselves emotional bomb shelters, lining their cold, concrete walls with the synthetic insulation of low-stakes intimacy, and then screaming into the calcified silence, wondering why we feel so desperately, crushingly alone. Having meticulously engineered the death of Eros, have we unwittingly unleashed something far older, far darker in its place? And then a tremor, a deep somatic disturbance that begins at the cellular level. It is the body, that ancient, faithful animal, finally rebelling against the tyranny of the mind's digital fantasies. For too long it has been a ghost, a dumb vessel carting the brain from one glowing screen to the next. But now it begins to scream. Not a sound you can hear, but a visceral, biological revolt. A scream for what it was built for: friction, pain, risk, the exquisite pressure of a real hand, the terrifying, beautiful weight of a single, irreplaceable bond. There is a rebellion underway, quiet and desperate. The digital detox. We witness the intimate profiles of those who have performed the excision, who have severed the digital umbilical to the hive. They describe the acute synaptic withdrawal that follows, the phantom limb of the endless scroll, the ghost itch in the thumb. The silence is not peaceful at first. It is a vast, roaring vacuum, a sensory deprivation tank for the ego. But then, slowly, something returns. The world begins to resolve into a higher definition, the color of a stranger's eyes across a coffee shop, the uneditable grain of a real conversation, with its stutters and its silences. This is the slow, terrifying, then exhilarating return to the high-resolution chaos of reality. And in that reality, an old dance is being relearned. The analog courtship. There is a quiet resurgence of third places, not as a strategy, but as a byproduct of a life being lived. The hobbyist group, the volunteer kitchen, the local bookstore. These are ecosystems where human meeting is an accidental, organic collision, a consequence of shared space and shared purpose, not the primary, pressurized goal of a hunt. Connection here is not a commodity to be acquired. It is a fragile, wild thing that might grow in the space between two people who are there for another reason entirely. And here, we must confront the central, terrifying act of love, the power of the painful choice. We have been fed the poisonous lie that freedom is infinite optionality. But a philosopher with brutal, stoic clarity makes the case for the sanctity of limitation. The act of choosing one person, and in that choice, consciously, deliberately forsaking all other possibilities, is not a sacrifice of freedom. It is the only act that gives freedom its meaning. To choose one person is to create a universe. To draw a line around two souls and say, "Here, this is what is sacred. Everything else is the void." It is not a prison. It is a cosmos. This demands a new scripture, a friction manifesto. It is not a regression to the past, but a conscious, willed reintroduction of healthy resistance into the sterile physics of modern relating. Phone calls over texts. Risk the live, unedited cadence of your voice. Ask someone out in person, face to face. Risk the somatic terror of their immediate, unfiltered response. And above all, learn to embrace the possibility of a hard no. A no is not a mortal wound to your ego. It is a vital sign. It is the beautiful, irrefutable proof that you are dealing with another sovereign human being, not a compliant avatar in your game. And this leads to the final, damning truth. The system is not broken. It is working perfectly. It was designed with chilling precision to do exactly what it is doing. It profits from your loneliness. It monetizes your hope. It sells you an endless, looping simulation of the very thing it is engineered to withhold. You cannot fix it. You cannot outsmart it. The only way to win is not to play. The ultimate act of human rebellion, the only move left on the board, is to choose one person and delete the app forever. You have now seen the architecture of your cage. The door was never locked.